You just can't save them all, can you? No, I'm not talking about school buses. I'm talking about good-hearted folks like you and me who get into this lifestyle and then suddenly find themselves in way over their head. I've been there. I have. And I've helped a lot of other folks who've been there too. And I gotta be honest, I couldn't save them all. That's why I'm making today's video. As someone who's been there and back again, well, more times than I can count, and has 16 years of dealing with all the BS a bus can throw your way, I wanted to make a video and share with you some of the most common mistakes I see folks make as they choose this lifestyle, enter into it, and then begin the conversion process. A little bit of wisdom and forethought in advance can save a whole lot of time, money, and heartbreak down the road. So that's what I'm hoping with today's video. I can take our hard-earned lessons, pass them along, and charge a little interest, and maybe you'll get a lot of value out of it too. So follow along. I'm gonna go over some of the biggest mistakes newbie Skoolie folks make so that you can avoid them on your end. Thanks for tuning in. Here we go. Sounds good, doesn't it? Just packing up, hitting the auction, buying a bus for $3 grand, taking the seats out, and living life. You know, I mean, giving a big middle finger to your landlord, and freedom, America. That is dangerous thinking, my friends, because I'll be the first to tell you, living in a bus ain't cheap. I made this mistake myself back when I was 19 years old and lived in my first bus, and vastly underestimated the cost of maintenance, fuel, not to mention the fact that you never really do have a home once you pull out of that driveway. But yeah, it was all worth it, sure. But what does it cost to actually live and enjoy life in a school bus? A lot more than you might imagine. For starters, let's talk about the price of a bus. It just isn't the case that you can buy a good running school bus for $3,000 or $4,000 anymore. Sure, the odd deal comes up every now and again, especially for those of us intrepid enough to hop on the auctions and take a chance buying a bus that we've never seen. But the majority of the time, you're going to be buying a bus from maybe a second party to own it after the school district, or even a dealer. And once you start getting into that zone, I tell folks, if you want something good running that's not going to be a money pit, you got to be prepared to spend at least $8,000 to $10,000, especially if it's a shorter size bus, because, well, those are all the rage. Moving on from the bus, let's talk about the build out. I mean, in the past 2 years, we've seen material prices in some instances triple. I know what I'm buying for $100 in steel today would have been $30 before the pandemic. After you get through the build out and all the time, energy, and money it takes to do that, and you finally do hit the road in all its glory, you're probably going to be encountered with some type of mechanical failure in your first 3,000 miles. It's just the odds. And I tell folks, if you pull a bus into a heavy-duty diesel repair shop, you're not going to leave there without spending $1,000. It's basically a guarantee. Heck, I've spent $6,000 at a mechanic shop fixing up a bus that had no problems. It's pretty expensive. You got to ask, like, what did they fix, you know? So then you're out there on the open road and life is good, isn't it? It is good. You are just slaying those miles, lots of smiles. Yep, but then it's time for new tires. And a new set of tires on a school bus is an easy $3,000. You got 6 of them, and each one, if you want something reputable, is gonna be about $500 installed. Yikes. If you get into this lifestyle thinking you're gonna be saving money or living for free, I got bad news for you, because it's expensive. Quite expensive sometimes. When was the last time you got on a bus and it was free? I mean, come on. Buying a bus is really the cheapest part of the whole experience. It's like buying a ticket to like the world's most expensive ride. Well, unless you're riding one of those billionaires' rockets to space. I think those are more expensive. But anyways, you get where I'm going with this. Buying a bus, getting it gutted and moving into it, that's not going to be the thing that ends your party. It's going to be a blown engine in the middle of who knows where when the mechanic hands you a bill for $20,000 and said, hey, if you want to get your house back on the road, this is what you owe me. And I've seen that happen before. And to be honest, it could happen to any of us. So you got to be on board with that, and you got to be prepared to deal with the consequences of that should it happen. Boy, the clear coat on that roof really is, it's peeling. Okay, so maybe you haven't followed my advice and still think that living this way is a good bet for you. Nice, welcome to the club. The next thing I want to talk about is a little condition I called, but I love it. And that's what happens when you go out and start looking at buses, because it's so easy to fall in love with the bus, especially if you're anything like this guy right here. Like this bus I'm leaning up against. Why'd I buy it? I don't know. It's a 74 GMC with the 350 V8, underpowered, pretty rusty. The tires are shot. Gets hopefully, 3 miles per gallon, 2 on the highway. Somehow it goes down on that. I don't get it. Oh, and the brakes have never worked right, even though I've spent about $1,000 trying to fix them. Anyway, I fell in love with it, and I was blinded by my love, and that's what caused me to make some pretty irrational choices. Anyway, look, I know it's tempting, especially if you're out there with somebody and a bus has a whole lot of character or personality, and you just want to snatch it up, But you got to make sure you keep your thinking hat on and stay rational, because like the bus behind me, it might be full of soul and character, might have a sweet personality, but the truth is you need something that's going to be rock solid. So let's assume you walk up to look at a bus and you got your level head on, you're not going to fall in love at first glance, and you start browsing around. All of a sudden you realize you have no idea what you're looking at. Oh boy, that is tough. Well, it gets really tricky when we're talking about drivetrains for the uneducated consumer, because the truth is you could have a Bluebird with a Chevy, a Thomas with a Cummins, or an International with an International, and you have no idea what that all means. And that's fine for now, but as soon as you start walking around with money in your pocket earmarked for a bus purchase, you better darn well know what you're signing up for. The bus behind me has an International T444E, which is, by some accounts, a fantastic motor. Not my favorite, but honestly, that's just my opinion. And that motor's gonna leave its owner a lot happier than the one that followed it, which was the VT365, also known as the Ford 6.0, which is notorious for being very problem prone and expensive to bulletproof. Although once they're running, they do really put out great power. It's impressive. But it can cost a pretty penny to get there, and that's assuming you catch it before the bad thing happens, which is really expensive to fix. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, when you're going out there bus shopping, come knowing what you're looking for. Have an engine in mind that you want to have, or maybe a few engines that you really like. A lot of folks are partial to the Cummins and Internationals. I'm some of those people, but some people swear by cats, and I'll be honest with you, I've had good experiences. Get out there, know what you're looking for. Don't compromise on the most important aspects of your bus. And to me, that's going to be the engine and transmission. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or should I say the rust on the bus? Look, I know it's tempting, and I know it's hard to find buses that don't have rust, especially if you live in the Northeast or any of the Rust Belt states there. But look, would you just hear a guy out when I say there is no such thing as a good deal on a rusty bus? Like, really, no such thing as a good deal on a rusty bus. I can't tell you how easy it is to just take your wallet out and throw money at rusty vehicles. They seem to soak it up. I don't know what it is. The porosity of the oxidized iron mixes with the green dye in the bill. I don't know how it works. But listen to me and take this to heart. Don't buy a rusty bus, because I've done it and it's not fun. This bus here, she's rusty, yeah, and I bought her. Whoops. And the bus that I bought in 2010, it was from Michigan. It was rusty, yep. I fought through it, sure, it was sad, and I worked a lot harder than I wanted to just to get back to square one. Bummer. But look, when you're out there bus shopping, either hold out and wait for one that isn't rusty, or spend the extra money or be willing to travel to find one that is nice and clean. Because there's no way of stopping rust. Rust never sleeps. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but it never sleeps, and we do sleep. And that means that, well, just simple math, you're going to lose the battle against rust. So don't start that fight, all right? It's a shame, though. I mean, I really love rust. I'm reminded, actually, of a bus that we did recently. That bus wasn't rusty, but the client actually showed up with his own bus. And I feel bad because he had spent about $8,000 on this bus. He bought it from Florida and had it shipped up to my shop in Denver. And right away, as I saw that bus getting unloaded off the flatbed trailer, I could tell that it wasn't going to work because that thing was so rusty. Oh my God. I mean, the frame was shot. There were holes in it. And this poor guy had bought it without knowing where to look and knowing that that could be a real problem for him. And so after getting on the phone with him and talking to him, we decided that the best way to move forward was actually to just sell that bus at a huge loss. I mean, he bought it for $8,000. We sold it for $1,800. And buy a new bus from here where rust isn't an issue and start from there, because he was looking at spending at least $10,000 just to get that bus up to a good starting point to be a foundation for a build. So we found him a bus locally. It actually had lower miles, better transmission, and no rust for $10,000. So happy-ish ending. I mean, he still spent a lot of money to learn that lesson. So hopefully you don't have to pay the same way he did. Moving right along in the comedy of errors that can be buying a bus, we got to talk about tires. Tires are expensive, and if you're looking at a bus in the $3,000 to $4,000 range, keep in mind that a new set of tires is going to cost you as much as that bus is worth. Yikes. Right here, look at this guy. We got lots of cracking and checking. This tire is older than I am. Maybe not, but it's close. Well, the tire on my right has plenty of tread, plenty of life. It's not cracked, and that's going to save money for you right now and down the road. I'm going to have to get a little bit serious with you on this one, because it's a mistake that I see even professional bus builders doing who sell their services to other people. And that mistake is leaving the interior skins and stock insulation on the bus and not taking out the stock floor and subfloor from a bus. As someone who has lived in a stock insulated school bus and also one that is totally insulated, you almost can't compare the two. You almost can't, except that there's still a bus, so I guess you can. In this bus, I've completely gutted it. There are no interior ceiling panels. There are no interior wall panels. I even got rid of the stock school bus windows because those are leaky and awful. I haven't yet demoed the floor, but you better believe I'm going to. And the reason is, you gotta get out all of that garbage fiberglass insulation. Odds are it's gonna be dirty. It might even be moldy, and I can guarantee you it's going to underperform just about anything else you might put in its place. In my case, I will be doing spray foam insulation in this bus, which has over double the R value per inch of thickness than fiberglass, in addition to the fact that it adds structural rigidity to my whole unit, not like it needs it, and it also acts as a vapor barrier, which is very important if you're going to be living, breathing, cooking, showering inside a small confined space. You want to make sure that any vapors, moisture vapors that get into the air are dealt with in a way that keeps them from condensing on the steel skin of your bus. Another step you really can't skip is demoing the floor. I've seen so many people, again, professional builders too, choose to lay their floor right over the old existing subfloor. That's bad news, and it's bad news for one really big reason, and that reason is rust. As someone who used to run a bus company, I can tell you that one of our favorite methods to clean out a bus when it was really, really disgusting was to pull it up on blocks, come in with a hose in the front, hose it down, and let it drain out the back. I said it. And you can imagine, even if the place you're buying it from didn't clean their buses that way, maybe they just left the windows down, or some of those snot-nosed kids with their snowy, muddy boots tracked a lot of moisture in. That moisture has nowhere to go but to soak and ruminate and just kind of like infuse itself with the subfloor. We're sitting right up against the steel, and that's going to cause rust. I don't care how clean your bus is when you start, you have no way, absolutely no way of knowing the condition of your metal floor pan aside from tearing out the subfloor. If you want to move forward with a build successfully and not just gloss over any issues it might have, you got to tear out that subfloor. You got to get the rubber off. You got to get the wood off if it has it. Look at that steel floor pan, treat it, paint it, and then go from there. Look, my last piece of advice here is one that's hard to give. And that's because it has to do with the windows. I mean, who doesn't love all these windows? I mean, it's amazing. One of my favorite things about a bus, and aesthetically, I mean, it's what makes a school bus a school bus. It's also what makes a school bus really hard to live in full time. These windows, while great for, housing a dump truck full of kids, are miserable to live with. They leak. They're designed to be replaced easily by any mechanic. And the trade-off for that is when the wind blows, you feel it inside. When the air's cold out here, it's cold in there. And the worst part of all is that this nasty little horrible design means that they almost always end up leaking inside. Even if you've gone to the trouble of pulling every window out, cleaning it, and then resealing it with your favorite sealant of choice. I've seen it all. In fact, one of my favorite clients had a bus where they opted to keep the first 4 windows on each side. And one day he calls me up and says, "Charlie, I got mushrooms growing out of my walls." And he wasn't kidding me. He sent me the photos. There were mushrooms growing out the side of his walls because the stock school bus windows that we tried to talk him out of, which he ended up keeping, were actually leaking water into his walls. Now, thank God we used closed cell spray foam insulation because that water had nowhere to go other than to soak into the plywood for the wall and sit there. So he brought his bus in. We removed the old bus windows, skinned over this side, put in new RV windows, pulled off the rotten plywood, hit the whole place with bleach and vinegar, and then we're able to move forward with just a new wall panel and some new windows. So it was an easy fix. But the point is, your build, if you leave the stock bus windows, you might not be so lucky, and it might be many months or years before you realize that you've had mold or worse growing in your walls, poisoning you. Oh, it pains my heart, but I gotta be honest, there is just no way I would ever willingly live full-time in a bus with stock windows because it's just too big of a risk. It's another thing that I see a lot of professional builders out there choosing to leave behind, and in my opinion, that's just not a responsible thing to do for your clients unless you totally educate them on all the ways it could go wrong. It doesn't save you money in the long run. It's too bad because I really love them. I really do. It makes it for me, but it also breaks it for me. Well, I hope I didn't scare you away. Listen to all the ways a bus conversion can go wrong before you even get started on the build out. But the truth is, there are a lot of ways it can go south on you, and I wanted to save you the stress and fear of walking through that minefield. As someone who's done it on their own before the existence of videos like this, I can tell you there's nothing worse than that feeling of recognizing that you've made a terrible mistake. And the only way to fix it is by spending a lot of time, a lot of money, or both. The point of today's video was to spare you, my friends and viewers, from having that realization for yourself. As a man much wiser than me once said, we're never going to survive unless we get a little crazy. Thanks for watching today's video. If you found it interesting or informative, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you didn't, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next week. Happy bussing. Are you kidding me? Damn, I just love the way these old buses smell. So we're getting serious. I don't care what you're saying. They just don't make them like this anymore, you know? Pow! Get out of here. No, we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy. I really love Rust. You know, like, Rust you can trust. Rust or bust. Ashes to ashes, rust to dust. Ooh, it gets dark, doesn't it?